I got to get in there. Wow, it's far away. All right, let's get this show on the road. Hey, everybody, welcome to today's Mobility, Tech, and Connectivity Show. This is our live monthly webcast that focuses on how we are connected and the way we get around. And I am Ryan Girardi, your host. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. If you're a regular viewer, you know that we normally do the show on Wednesdays, but it's the day before Thanksgiving. So bumped it up a day early just to kind of get the holiday weekend off to an early start for as many people as we can. So today on the program, we're going to take a good look at the new bipartisan infrastructure bill that was signed into law last week. I also have a special guest on today. We'll be talking about 3D printed prosthetics for pet mobility. Interesting new topic for us. And then we're going to look at how to get rewarded for car shopping. So we have Alexander Tholl from DiveDesign, an industrial design company, coming on to talk about pet prosthetics. We have Eric Brown, who's the founder and purveyor of AskOtto, who you've seen up here a couple times before. And then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to move into our panel discussion on the infrastructure bill and some of the news items. And I have Transit Unplugged podcast host Paul Comfort lined up to join us for that. So all of this is coming up and more. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, we got a good show lined up for you today.
Oh, well, I'm a Game of Thrones nut, so that's my jam.
The robots are listening. The robots are listening.
All right. Let's get this party on the road. Before I do get started, what I'd like to do is bring up my screen here and just give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, SmartPiXL, by M1 Data and Analytics. M1 Data and Analytics turn your website's anonymous visitors into engaged customers. SmartPiXL turns those website visitors into fully identified first-party consumer data. And when this match takes place, SmartPiXL can return up to 300 attributes on the consumer. So things like name, postal address, email, but gender, date of birth. How about more specific things like home ownership, vehicle ownership, what political party they might be associated with, children, you name it, over 300 attributes. And with industry stats indicating that as much as 50% of your website visitors are non-human clicks, and the remaining traffic, only 5% convert into a lead or contact. SmartPiXL quickly provides a tremendous opportunity for increased ROI on marketing dollars, as your business can now identify and engage the 95% that were previously anonymous. SmartPiXL real-time information about your website visitors, easy to install and fully GDPR and CCPA compliant. Find out more by going to autoconverse.com/SmartPiXL. So this came out a couple weeks ago. Facebook is shutting down its facial recognition system, as they say, which automatically identifies users in photos and videos. And they're shutting it down, citing societal concerns about the use of such technology. Vice President Jerome Presenti says regulators are still in the process of providing a clear set of rules to govern its use. And amid this ongoing uncertainty, we believe that limiting the use of facial recognition to a narrow set of use cases is appropriate. So if I were to add my commentary, I would say I would be rest assured they're still recognizing your face in photos and videos. They're probably just not crowdsourcing it and letting people tag you automatically. But I wouldn't let that fool you to think that you're not being recognized when you're using Facebook and Instagram and even WhatsApp as well. In other news, Verizon and Nissan have completed a proof of concept showing how sensor data and vehicles surrounding infrastructure could be processed at the edge of Verizon's wireless network to help guide drivers in near real time. So what is the edge? Well, it's technically the multi-access edge layer computing layer within the 5G, which is being rolled out. And what that edge does is it allows massive amounts of more information to be processed much more efficiently than it does now. I won't get into the semantics of it, but Nissan and Verizon are clearly testing these new technologies out for that purpose. In EV news, and if you look around the blog, I should have mentioned, if you go to autoconverse.com and look at today's blog, all these news items are actually listed on here. And why do we do this? Well, what I could tell you is we spend an incredible amount of time scouring the web, newsletters, search engines, websites for news and information related to how we're connected and the way we get around. And then we, as you know, package it up and present it to you here, and also on our podcast. You can, if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, you should do that. It's a whole different experience from the live show. In fact, this live show serves more as a recording session for the podcast. So search for AutoConverse on your preferred podcast app, and have a whole different experience of the show. So what I was mentioning here is that GM is partnering with EV Connect to offer dealerships charging management nationwide. In fact, if I recall, find my notes on this. Oh, I lost. Why do I lose my notes? I don't know why this happens to me. I had it right here. Okay. I know where they are. You got to forgive me. Oh, and I have a cool video for you to play, a short one from Elon Musk as well. So last month we reported that Toyota is building a U.S. battery plant as part of a $3.4 billion investment into electric vehicles. And this month, as I mentioned, EV charging solution provider EV Connect is now one of GM's approved partners for charging solutions at dealerships. And so far, more than 600 dealerships have already signed up to leverage EV Connect's charging solution to help automakers with their call for electrification. This whole episode is very heavily focused on electrification, and partly because we're working on a series of editorials around this push and some of the rhetoric and motivations behind it. So that's why we bring up just tons of development going on related to electrification. Remember, GM just less than 2 months ago announced it'd be installing up to 40,000 electric vehicle chargers across North America, and that's part of a $750 million investment into charging infrastructure that will help charging across the nation. In fact, the state of Michigan is working to implement charging stations around the west coast of Lake Michigan. If you're a Great Lakes guy like I am, then you'll know there's a lot of just awesome tourist attractions and beaches along the west coast of Michigan, and the state is putting together a network of charging stations there as well. And then here's some news for you. The state of Tennessee has approved an $884 million incentive for Ford to build a Blue Oval City project in the Memphis region on their regional Megasite. So just lots of just really cool stuff going on. I was reading about this EcoCAR challenge, EV challenge, the 4-year challenge that's starting just this month. Yeah, I think it's starting just this month. And basically, they're accepting applications. It's mostly targeted for universities with ABET accredited engineering programs. Teams will have 4 years to design and engineer a next generation battery electric vehicle that utilizes automation and vehicle to everything connectivity to implement energy efficient and customer appealing features. Teams will follow a real-world vehicle development process to meet rigorous technical milestones throughout the program and compete head-to-head with other teams in annual competition trials. And then the final competition will culminate in the summer of 2026. So pretty cool. And hopefully we're still around to report on that. And I should mention, head on over to ryangerardi.com. You'll see a link to my Medium site, and I put an article out for you called Electric Batteries, Not Engines, Drive New Mobility in AutoTech, and you get a nice, good breakdown of the different battery technologies. Let me tell you, this is becoming a moving target, the way EV battery technologies are working. And coming up, possibly as early as next month, we'll be talking about hydrogen fuel cell technology as well. Okay, guys, what I'd like to do is I'm going to transition over to bring on Alexander Tholl. He is the founder of DiveDesign, which specializes in pet prosthetics. In fact, I have a press release right here speaking to that. And you can see what we're going to be talking about today is their development of this. I don't know if you call it a pet wagon. I'll have to ask Alex what we call them. So, Alex, if you're ready, let's go ahead and bring you up here and bada boom. Hey, man, welcome to the Mobility Tech and Connectivity Show.
Ryan, thanks for having me.
And great to finally formally meet you face to face.
Likewise.
Alex and I crossed paths in the Clubhouse app. If you're familiar with Clubhouse, it's a drop-in audio app that we both frequent, and that's how we crossed paths. And I said, man, I've never covered pet prosthetics on my mobility show, so it's great to have you here. Hey, where are you dialed in from? I should let the audience know.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. We're based out of northern New Jersey, and I like pet wagon, by the way. I think we're going to stick with that.
Pet wagon? Okay, did I make that up? Just
yeah,
inadvertently?
I think you did.
Awesome. Is there a technical formal name for them?
Wheelchair, believe it or not, is what I think a majority of our clients use.
Okay. All right. Look, I'm in uncharted territory, industrial design. I think all I know about is what you shared probably 2 months ago on that Clubhouse meeting. So why don't you just maybe enlighten us, just tell us briefly, in a minute or so, what about DiveDesign? All I know is you do industrial design. Are you specific to pet prosthetics, or is that just happens to be one market you're covering?
Yeah, we could definitely get into it. My partner and I founded DiveDesign about 2.5 years ago. In fact, it was a little bit longer while we were in college. We had both done a lot of freelance work and decided that we'd be better off working together than separate. And it's been an incredible ride. We started off, like you'd mentioned, doing traditional product design development. So we would help our clients further their ideas and bring them to fruition through multiple rounds of prototyping, focus groups, and then helping them get ready for DFM, which is designed for manufacturing. One of the things that we really became ingrained with over the course of that time, over the last, I'd say, 1.5 to 2 years, is additive manufacturing, so 3D printing. And we just became, I don't want to say experts, but we became extremely knowledgeable in the space with all the different types that are out there currently, what's making a lot of headway and what's not. And so when we met up with the founder of Bionic Pets about 2 years ago and expressed to him that we'd love to try and solve one of his challenging problems, he presented the full limb prosthetic to us. And so dogs who have gone through a traumatic injury, whether it had been an accident or cancer and had some type of limb removed, we would help them. And we designed a custom digital tool along with 3D scanning and 3D printing to bring this to life. And so now we do about 20 of these a month. And we do special cases like this, one of which you're looking at right now is with a company called Braskem. They're a Brazilian chemical company, and they've come out with this incredible copolycarbon fiber that we 3D print with. And it was a perfect use case for this dog, Hannah, which we're looking at, who has cerebellar hypoplasia. So she's got no balance whatsoever. This is a small part of our company. It's only about 15%, but it's something that we use to really highlight what's capable with additive. We talk about mobility on this show, and I think there's still so much to be learned about mobility along with additive. It's just an emerging technology that I think has yet to truly been harnessed, if you will. And so we really want to be on the forefront of showing companies how they can harness additive manufacturing to skip going overseas, the wait time, lead time, minimum order quantities, and so on.
So you do 3D printing, which, when we think of printing, right, our minds think of printing onto paper, but these are actual mechanical devices. Why are we using the term printing? Is that fair to the technology?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't heard that one in a long time. Why do they call it printing? I think because when it first came out, they referenced it so closely to paper printing. You would click print on your computer and this machine would start to finish what you had created, whether it was on a piece of paper or whether it was using plastic filament. So I think that's really where it came from. Is it doing it justice? No, but it's so widely known. I mean, people who've never even seen the industry at least have heard of a 3D printer. So it clicks and it's stuck, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 3D printing in action years ago when it was kind of new, right? But never I just thought, oh, cool, you can make a 3D model. But now it's like you can make guns. Oh, and you can make pet prosthetics. So like, so you're actually making, you're making true objects. It's just that the actual application of making them might be different from a warehouse. That's the difference.
Absolutely. And we're getting into automotive, believe it or not, which is really incredible. So thinking through how we can quickly prototype full-scale products to go on, whether it's a fender flare or it's an interior component. There's some really famous aftermarket automotive companies that use this to then do carbon fiber layovers to create their final models. So it is becoming so popular. I think, like I said, we're just touching the surface here with potential, and we're pretty excited.
No, I mean you're in a just a exploding space. I mean, my thought is, are there limitations to what you can print? Like, can you print tires for cars? Because I think you could do bumpers, but could you do tires?
We print the wheels for the prosthetics right now. I think that's as far as we go. Tires for cars, I can tell you that we're not far off from it. The machines are there. The materials are close. It's just a matter of how do you combine the metal banding inside of the tires with the 3D print, but we are not far. And we're talking about even creating molds now from these 3D printed pieces. Something that once took, let's say, 15 hours to print can now take an hour depending upon the process that you're using. I'll give you another example too. We're working with an industrial valve company, and it has become increasingly difficult for them to get their die cast valves made overseas. They are unbelievably expensive. Their profit margins have dropped significantly. And so we had found this opportunity. We had met with the CEO, and we had come in and said, you can 3D print this. You're running non-abrasive chemical through these. Why don't you just print the valves? Let's adjust the CAD a little bit and forget going overseas and bring it back to the United States. And so we've helped them save millions of dollars. And this is just the start with that relationship. So there's a lot to come. There's a lot to come.
I can imagine, and you can see I'm showing here your Bionic Pets page. So, okay, how long? Let's get into this particular example here of this dog with the front leg. Let's start with what's the cost of something like that for a consumer to buy for their pet? What are they looking at?
They're looking at about $1,700 for one of these devices. And,
okay.
I can go into a little bit more on the material and the process if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess my first thought is are there alternatives, or is this their only option if they want to put a leg on the dog?
That's a good question. Yes, there are alternatives. There's two other companies in the world that produce these on a regular basis, but they use very traditional orthotic and prosthetic methods, thermoforming plastic over a plaster of Paris mold, and there's almost no flexibility in terms of adjustments, etc. Our devices are made out of a TPU, which is not only waterproof, obviously with the holes that we have, it's breathable, and we've designed it so that it's flexible in specific areas where the body moves the most versus where we need rigidity, like where the leg mounts. And so a lot of time and a lot of prototypes have gone into this, but we've really optimized, I think, at this point. And even the feet now are shock absorbing. We're using a special TPU material that has excellent grip. And that's what we use at the base so they don't go sliding on hardwood floors.
Okay. And does the printing application, does that bring the price down for consumers, or is it raise the price? I guess it brings it down.
It doesn't actually bring it down. It's about the same, but it's the quality of the product that has gone up significantly. And that's why the price has not come down. Okay. So at this point, if you had to choose from buying this one versus a thermoplastic one and they're about the same price, why not go with the latter?
Exactly.
So that's really how we're trying to target the market here.
Yeah, you're getting a
but
better
there's no other
product.
device on the market like this. Right.
Yep. And what's the lifespan of that particular prosthetic? Like in this case, is that only going to work on that dog? You know, the dog's going to pass away. Does the object become reusable?
Every device is specific to every animal. It does not fit any other animal except for yours. We work off of a mold or a scan of your dog, and therefore it is specific to them. We've been doing these for about 2 years now, and we've had a dog wearing it. Actually, the dog you see, the reason we have the video up is because she's been the longest wearer. It's been about just shy of 2 years. I think at the end of this year, it'll be 2 years because we did that towards January of 2019, 2018, whatever it was.
And now how long is that that particular piece expected to last?
We expect it to last quite a few years. Eve is 8, I believe, and we expect it to outlive her. Okay. That's our goal. But we stand behind our products. So anytime anyone needs adjustments or help with fixing something, we're there for them.
Okay. And then is the material recyclable once it's not able to be used anymore?
TPU is recyclable. Finding somebody who will recycle it is extremely difficult. The most recycled 3D printed material right now is PETG, but even the guys who do that struggle with TPU. We do hang on to it. We have a ton of it here in our studio just because we, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to just chuck something has potential. If that can eventually turn into some type of harness again in one day, someday, or these turn into something that you sell that helps cover the cost for somebody who maybe doesn't have the funds for the entire device. I think that's really where our heads are at.
Well, this is pretty neat, man. Congratulations on your breakthroughs and doing something great for mankind. My next question on your next time it comes to be, what's your carbon footprint? But I'm saying that in jest because we're starting to take a shift of kind of shifting a lot of our focus on the show to climate, climate impact, carbon impact, and all that. So it's going to become standard for industrial and manufacturing companies to know their carbon footprint, and we're going to have a token system eventually that becomes like a currency. Are you anticipating that for your company?
Wow, that's incredible to think about. We've definitely talked about it in the past, but giving it that much thought as far as a token goes, I think is pretty incredible. What I can tell you regarding the prosthetics is that we have greatly reduced the carbon footprint, and I'll tell you why. The traditional way of building these required an immense amount of plaster of Paris material. I think the final model comes out to be like 60 pounds worth of material that can never get used again. It gets thrown away once they get the thermoform plastic wrapped over it. And that brings me to my second point. When you heat up that large sheet of plastic and you wrap it over that mold, you're trimming off a huge amount of that plastic that can't ever be used again. So not only are you throwing away that plaster, you're throwing away that additional plastic, you're throwing away a good amount of foam, because the traditional way you have to line the entire device with foam padding. Ours only has a small amount over where the leg mounts. So we've reduced the amount of material on these greatly. And we talk about additive manufacturing versus subtractive manufacturing.
Oh, that's right.
So big difference there.
Yeah. Lots to learn. And, these are new considerations for businesses and business owners, especially in the manufacturing sector. Well, great. Alexander, hey, thanks for taking time to come up here and share this with us. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much for having me, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Alexander Tholl, everybody, from DiveDesign, talking about pet prosthetics, as you saw. And we're going to segue over to our next segment. I have Eric Brown coming on from AskOtto. And while we bring him on, what I'm going to, and Alex is going to come back on in a few minutes. We're going to open up our panel discussion about the new infrastructure bill. And Paul Comfort will be on as well. But just to kickstart our next segment, which will be about 10 minutes, I'm going to bring Eric Brown, but let me play you this quick video.
Are you still looking for a car? Did you know that when you click on car ads, dealers pay for every click? But shouldn't you get paid? After all, you're the one clicking. That's why I use AskOtto. With AskOtto, you build rewards as you shop. Plus, AskOtto recommends exclusive offers based on your needs. You can ask questions on cars you like and still protect your personal information. You can even set your price. Who knew car shopping could be so easy and rewarding? AskOtto, fast, fun, and rewarding car shopping.
All right, and here is the man himself trying to make car shopping easy and fun. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm trying to make everything fun, not just car shopping.
We need more fun in this world, huh?
We
Good
need
fun.
a lot more fun in this world.
But car shopping is a good place to start.
It's a place to start, yes.
Eric, what makes you qualified to innovate in the auto industry? And tell us. And it's a loaded question, folks.
Boy, that
know what it
is.
is, but I want Eric to tell
what
us
fun is when I see it, right? So I've got that going for me. I think a little bit this goes back to my history. I owned a company before and co-founded that, analyzed consumer experiences on the web for the automotive industry. And it was really evident fairly early on that the path to purchase, the way consumers navigate the internet, and not only for automotive, but pretty much everything, is not nearly as efficient as it should be. And that, we often miss the most important things, the right content, the right product, the right solution, simply because we didn't click on the right link or do the right type of search. And so we'd see in that data consumers missing out on opportunities to find the best car deal for themselves. And then on the other side of the coin, for the automotive dealer and manufacturers, everybody in the space, there are a lot of inefficiencies in that too. When the consumer, is clicking on things, it's costing money, but it's also, if they're not getting to a solution for themselves, then that investment is also being wasted. And that's just being translated into the price of the car. So, at the end of the day, consumer pays for everything that's involved from a cost standpoint. So it was just looking at the data, I guess, really that made me sort of go, aha, there's a way to invert this. And instead of, organizing, advertising, marketing around how do we get the consumer to the car, to navigate to the car, what if the consumer could just curate or just request the car to come to them? And so that, that's essentially what we do now, is the consumer simply ask Auto to find a vehicle, and then, we start making vehicle recommendations, and they can accept them or decline them. And if they find something they like, they can open dialogue without personal identifiable information with the local dealer. They schedule a test drive, et cetera. So just let's remove the friction. And a lot of the friction today on the internet is navigation.
I cringe when I watch people use their computers and the internet, because it makes me realize how confusing the landscape can be for some people. And there's times I'm pretty tech savvy in the sense when it comes to the internet and the web. But like yesterday, I was supposed to join a parent-teacher conference, and I couldn't figure out how to get the Zoom access. And they even sent an email with instructions, and I couldn't get in there for the conference. So technology can be a hurdle. And I'm going to reiterate what you shared, because I think Eric, you see the granular, you see the big picture, but you also see the granular problems. But the average consumer, they're not looking at car shopping in the way that we are from the inside out. They're like looking, they're just this inundation of information. So what Eric's explaining is that AskOtto will serve up ads for a local dealer, and you can interact with the ad, and it will respond to you effectively, the interface, to help you narrow down the car that's best suited for you based off of the inputs. And I'm sure you use other information that about the shopper as well.
Yeah. I don't know if I just call them ads as much as they're vehicle recommendations that we're responding to. The consumer is either directly said, hey, Auto, find me a Honda Accord, for less than 25,000, or they have taken a quiz. So we use a quiz, for example, that's based on survey data from Strategic Vision that looks at all of the prior ownership of the vehicle. So in other words, who owns this car, who loves this car, who doesn't love this car, looks at the attributes of those consumers. Then we ask 5 quick questions of the consumer, and we say, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, well, you're just like Sally, who loves her Toyota Prius. And so we think there's a high degree of confidence that you'll love the Toyota Prius should you purchase it. And so we'll rank actually 471 vehicles. The AI will go in there and produce 471 recommendations. We show the top 3. And then from there, the consumer can say, hey, well, that is right. Or I didn't even know that car existed. I'm curious to learn more about it. Let me click here and ask Otto more questions about that vehicle. And so we're trying to curate the experience for the consumer so they don't have to visit, according to Google, the average consumer visits 28 websites on their way to purchase a car. All of that's just data. It's just content sitting on websites. Why do I have to spend weeks bouncing around between websites when I could just ask a machine to find it and pull it all together for me?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a magnificent use of technology. Like you said, there's so much info, and AskOtto is trying to bring the right info to it. Now, you said that the algorithm's gonna pull 471 different vehicle products as a rule of thumb. It's only going to show you the first few, but there's why 471? Like, why not 450?
Because that's the number of makes and models that we have survey data on. There's probably a few more makes and models than that, but that's pretty much the universe. And so, the research team's job every day is, there's a new make and model. Let's go ask some consumers who own this car about their experience, and let's learn something about them so we can find other consumers like them that would also love this car.
It sounds a little bit like crowdsourcing, in the sense you're constantly analyzing and evaluating people's behaviors and choices. And so that algorithm's constantly getting updated and hopefully more accurate in theory.
Yeah. In fact, we just launched an update last week with the quiz to add more accuracy to it. And we're looking typically at, data about the consumer's sort of attitudes toward purchase, toward ownership, and their zip code where they are, their age, and just what's important to them in a vehicle. And then we query we pull all that together, and we say, who else answered this survey like that, and then reported loving the vehicle they purchased? What vehicle was that? And we even have the data in the background and we'll be exposing this soon actually as well. But we have the data of what are the top 5 things the owners love about the Toyota Prius, what are the bottom 5 things they don't like, and why do they buy this car? And so we have literally millions of reviews essentially about these vehicles.
So we're a little behind, folks, and I want to segue into our discussion. I have Paul Comfort coming on from the Transit Unplugged podcast, and Alex is going to join me and Eric here. But Eric, let's get into the rewards. Let's just spend like a minute and a half here.
Yeah.
Because that's what we kind of pitted it as, the car shopping that rewards you. How do the rewards work? Explain that.
Yeah. So pretty much like air miles through a partnership with Amazon. Essentially, you earn points for various actions you take, like answering the quiz. In fact, every consumer who initially jumps on here shortly, we're going to be rewarding $10 to everybody who gets on AskOtto. And then you earn different rewards as you take different events, maybe getting pre-qualified on a car, or scheduling a test drive, or referring a friend to AskOtto. But that's building up an account that's redeemable then by a redemption event. So a redemption event would be, for example, going to test drive a vehicle or scheduling a sales call. The consumer can actually say to the dealership, call me on Thursday at 5. We're putting the consumer in control of that. Or it could be, we have some partners like Car Shield and different insurance companies that will redeem that reward for you if you get a quote on extended warranty, or get a quote on car insurance. And so then that money's released to your Amazon account if you take those actions. So a combination of earning and redemption, just like airline miles. You get airline miles and then you redeem them when you use points to get an airline ticket.
And are the rewards limited to Amazon?
So that's our default partner. We actually are working with several malls in the country where you could scan a QR code in the mall and earn mall rewards, and much in the same way. So it can be any sort of reward structure. And Amazon is sort of the universally well-known brand at this moment, and they have a technical infrastructure that's very proficient in defining and rewarding the rewards, or distributing rewards.
Yeah, Amazon in so many ways has become like a center point for so many ideas and implementations. Well, great. So, folks, you've seen AskOtto on the site. If you frequent the site, you hear us playing AskOtto, in our podcast here on the show. Eric's been here a handful of times. We're working in partnership with Eric and AskOtto to help consumers, with their car shopping needs. So you can actually support what we do here by going to autoconverse.com/AskOtto. That's OTTO. It'll bring you to the page that you see here on my site. What'll happen is if you activate your account or your shield using our link, then we'll be able to help you on the back end with whatever you need, whether it's selling your car, trading your car, or getting into a new one. You'll also get your rewards as well, and we'll be able to assist you in that process, and you'll be supporting the podcast. So again, go to autoconverse.com/AskOtto for that. All right, Eric. Hey, good to see you here, but hang tight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to bring Paul. I'm going to bring Paul on stage. We're going to kickstart the conversation around the infrastructure bill, and then we'll have Eric and Alex join us as well. So we'll be right back. Okay, I figured out my buttons. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Ryan. How you doing, man?
Great to see you here again.
Thank you. Likewise.
It's been a long couple of years.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was saying this backstage. Paul and I had met right before the pandemic, and he had this whole world tour planned for your podcast, Transit Unplugged, and then the pandemic happened, and so the story goes. But here you are. How's that podcast doing these days?
It's great. TransitUnplugged.com, and wherever you get it, it's ranked #1 in the world for transit executive podcasts, heard in 100 countries now, and it's going great. We just did a big event last month, or actually earlier this month, down at the American Public Transit Association, and where we had 5 of the most powerful women in transit on a live roundtable with hundreds of people there. We had the whole TV studio set up, and the podcast. The big news, Ryan, is we're turning it into a TV show. Kind of an Anthony Bourdain style TV show. And I've already filmed the first 3 episodes. The first one's in Las Vegas. The next one was in Nashville. And the third one was this roundtable. So I encourage people to go there and visit and find out more to our website, transitunplugged.com.
And there it is right there on your screen. Definitely check it out. Congratulations on the evolution of your podcast. And that's really cool to hear.
Thanks,
so let's get into things. We've got about 15 minutes here.
Okay.
And what I have on my screen somewhere. Okay. Got 2 things. I have 7 ways the bill could change your future car. We're going to look at that. And then I have a nice list here, folks. This is on our blog, autoconverse.com. I got it from Axios, as you can see right there. But it kind of gives you a breakdown of where all this money is going towards repair and infrastructure. Things that stood out for me are things like investment into climate resiliency and electric vehicles and buses. But I think for Paul, what probably stood out for you are things like modernizing transit and whatnot. So yeah, give us your 2 cents on the bill and what it means for you and your network.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, my world is public transit. And so the infrastructure bill was big for the public transit world as well. The bottom line is this infrastructure, this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, included inside of it, subsumed in it, was the once every 5 years Transit Reauthorization Act. Normally that gets passed separately on its own, but for some reason the Democrats decided to put it into this bill. And so they had to do some extensions of it, but it finally passed. And the good news for our industry is that it included record amounts of funding for $107 billion for public transit over the next 5 years. Basically, Ryan, what happened was during the peak of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, the way people were getting to their jobs, not the white collar jobs, right? Because everybody with white collar jobs could work at home like me. We do it all from our computer. But the blue collar jobs, people that are actually what they were calling essential workers. I don't like that term because I think, most work is essential, but you get the drift. People that worked at hospitals and ran the power plants and the water plants and all, they were riding public transit to get to their jobs. And so when they told everybody else you can't ride, just if we still were at like 50% capacity. And so I think the federal government finally realized, hey, public transportation is no longer just a local city responsibility. It really is a federal priority because it's what keeps our cities and our economy rolling during this pandemic time. And it showed them that it's important. So the government stepped up in a big way and basically increased funding for our what they call the basic titles, like we have a section 5307, which is operating dollars that go to public transit agencies for big cities. That went up 43%. Massive increases in funding. And that's on top of three big tranches of funding, which occurred during the pandemic, where they gave us billions and billions of other dollars during that time. And so the federal government stepped up in a big way for public transit. So we're happy.
And I'm happy too, because there was so much cool, great developments in public transit. I think it'd be obvious to point out Uber and Lyft, as a great development, but there's so much more with autonomous vehicles.
That's right.
And smaller campuses and whatnot. So I'm happy for that. And I sense your excitement in there as well. Eric, you come from the automotive side. Did anything, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the bill or inspect it, but I'm just curious if anything really stood out for you that you'd want to comment on.
Just how much money it is. How do I get 1%?
How do you get 1%? I was thinking that too. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to, I'll ask Paul a different question, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of I don't know if it's old school. I wish more of the bill, and it may be in there and I just haven't seen or heard about it because it's probably not sexy enough, but was toward investment in future technology. So as a guy who earns a living from the internet that was invented by the government and then later commercialized by private industry, it seems to me where the government's been most effective is when they're funding or sponsoring technical development that the private sector either doesn't have the appetite for or the resources for it yet. So you see with, the space program and military, or technology that translates into improving everyday lives more than fixing bridges. I'm not saying that's not important, but I wish that they would put as much priority into the future as they do in repairing the past.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. A lot of people were saying that. And one of the good things that did come in, Ryan mentioned earlier about hydrogen, there is an increase in funding for what they call the low or no funding, which is low emission or no emission for buses. And so, the big trend, one of the hot trends coming out of last year into this year is electric buses, right? Electric battery buses. Companies like Proterra, New Flyer, Gillig are the big providers of buses that are electric here in the U.S. But in this bill, there was also a set aside for hydrogen vehicles. And that is that really is the hottest trend, in my opinion, right now. Like this month, November and October. I mean, I've been to a couple big trade shows for the first time. We've been able to have them in 2 years, and that's what everybody's talking about. So, and there was money set aside just for that, for the development and the purchase of those vehicles. And so there is some money in there, like you said, for this new technology.
I have to lean towards Eric's side of things here. I'm a big believer that history repeats itself in one way or another. And I don't know whether that's a belief I have because I own a small business and I have to continually look back to see where things are going. But, I'm a big history buff when it comes to automotive and transportation. I just think back to all the electric trolleys that used to run the cities. I went to school in Philadelphia. I've been out to San Francisco numerous times. And here we are, how many years later, and we're trying to get electric buses and other types of transportation back into these cities. And I don't know. I think I'm just a bit frustrated with the amount that's being spent on everything. And just all of the small businesses that I think could really benefit from some of this, I would love to see go to that. But, I think there's a lot of good to be had here. I'm curious to see how it all pans out.
I like what you're getting at, Alex, because Paul, what I was going to ask you, if you know, I mean, you're talking tens of billions of dollars to different aspects of infrastructure, and that money comes out over a period of time, right? It's not like here's a lump sum. So it's government, so we can assume there's a lot of waste, a lot of red tape, a lot of inefficiency. So Alex, I'm kind of with you. To me, the more that money can get into small business hands, the better. Unfortunately, I don't think the world works that way anymore. It seems like the world really wants to focus on big, big companies, big money, big scalability at the detriment of the smaller business. It's unfortunate, but that's what I'm witnessing. I think we all are.
I still think there's some, if you just look at like SpaceX and Blue Origin, what they've been able to accomplish for a fraction of the investment the government compared to what the government made to accomplish the same thing. It just seems like there's probably some, right? I mean, it's like 1/10. It's and yet you still have politicians going, we want the government to do that. Why are these billionaires doing it? Because they do it for 1/10 the cost. That's why.
Yeah.
Right. They run it like a company. I agree. I know.
Wish they could find some private public cooperation there to say, we'll cover your backs, I guess, from a liability standpoint. But
you're right, Eric.
Does the work, right?
Yeah. In the public transit industry, that's actually, I think, I'm a former CEO of the transit system in Baltimore, and did a bunch of work in Washington, D.C. as well. And I can tell you that one of the great things that's happened in the public transit industry over the last 5 years is just what you're talking about, a movement to more cooperation with the private sector. So Uber and Lyft came in, at the beginning of this decade and really disrupted ridership, right? Because what they call the choice riders, people that can afford to do other things than ride public transit, said, hey, I'm not going to stand here and wait for 40 minutes in the rain for this bus. Right. I'm just going to call her. So we saw a big rush of people go out of the traditional ridership. And, I can tell you at the time I was in there in 2015, 16, everybody's freaking out saying, what are we going to do? Ridership's declining. And so really there was a guy named Nat Ford, who runs Jacksonville's transit system, who was head of our national association, APTA. And he basically said, like 4 or 5 years ago, we need to change the role of a public transit agency in the city to not just be the provider of bus, light rail, subway, all that, but the aggregator of all these mobility services in the city. And so the bikes, the scooters, the Ubers, the Lyfts, and now these new companies like Silver Ride and Userve, which are like Ubers for the elderly and disabled people with disabilities, pull them all together under one roof and outsource to them where it makes sense, it doesn't make sense to run a fixed route bus down this road because we're not getting, 40 passengers an hour. So let's just not run it down that road. Let's instead let Uber, Lyft, or some of these other companies do that under contract with us. And so we're kind of entering that macroeconomic environment where we're pulling in more than just government provided service, but we're allowing the private sector in the tent, which I agree with you. I think it's a smart thing to do.
So it's a story along those lines. I was at LaGuardia not too long ago, and I actually took an Uber from one terminal to the other because it got me there in half the time. Waiting on and taking the bus would have, right?
Yeah, I agree with everything that we're conversing about here. To me, I can just see. I mean, we talk about job creation through public transportation, but sometimes I have to think to myself, if you would put that money into the existing infrastructure that Uber and Lyft have created, which, mind you, started out as small businesses who had to raise external capital, and you put that money to them, not only could you potentially allow new people to afford cars that could use that ride share to earn a living, more than just the 1 or 2 bus drivers that run a single route in a city. That's really where my head is at. I think you guys might have overheard, we're in a very new space in terms of technology with additive, and we are constantly having to ask ourselves, what is coming down the pike? How can we stay ahead of this curve? Because everything is just moving so quickly, and I still feel like we're just trying to put so much money and effort into something that it just is no more. I mean, we have moved past horses and carriages for a reason, and yet we're still dumping thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into it. I help restore historic rail cars on the weekends, and we run them on Amtrak's line. And the amount of money that it takes to run a single historic car on Amtrak's line is unreal. And we were going up to Albany last week from Penn Station, and the 6 cars that we were behind there was maybe 50 people that had gotten off at Albany. And I was just beside myself with the amount of money that it takes to run this engine all the way up there, all these cars, all the employees, and yet 50 people get off on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know I don't know. You just have to ask yourself, what is coming down the pike? Is it going to continue to be this way? And I just don't think it is.
So Ryan and I have talked about this before, but what's coming down the pike is anything that reduces lowers the resistance on the path of least resistance. In other words, consumers will always seek the path of least resistance. So to your point, I'm in the car business because they're more convenient than horses, et cetera, right? Buses were more convenient for a while. And so
yes.
I think consumers will always seek that path of least resistance. It's just innate. And it's understanding, where those investments should be made to accelerate that adoption.
And mind you, SpaceX and Tesla, they all started as small businesses. Elon and PayPal, I mean, they all start somewhere, and yet we're focusing on the ones that are already enormous. To your point, Eric, it's like you got to help the little guys to help get them to the big guys that can then really help the infrastructure. In my eyes, at least, that's the way I think it should be. But what do I know?
Well, I think you seem to know quite a lot on the subject. That's awesome. Kind of lost my train of thought. I was having a hard time keeping up with you guys. My bandwidth was so spotty. So I'm glad it didn't affect your conversation, but I do feel like I kind of missed a lot of that. But
there's an infrastructure issue, Ryan.
Right. That's where we need some improvement. Alex, your example of the historical train, right? Who's funding that? That's probably a state funded attraction that you're referring to?
It's a nonprofit. They do all of their own fundraising. So the reason that we were on that track going up to Amtrak is that's how we raise funds, is we allow people to come on for a weekend and explore what a rail car from 1939 was like, traveling on that Sam rail up the Hudson, to give them that experience.
That's awesome, man. I love that stuff.
It's pretty neat. Yeah.
So if it's nonprofit, then it's probably getting funding from different sources, including from government programs. And profitability isn't necessary in that case, which is why it's, like you said, it's frustrating because of the cost, but it doesn't have to profit. And I would just put forth that's the importance of a capitalistic market, it propels innovation and efficiency on its own. It has negative consequences such as greed and corruption, but it does, at the root of things, propel innovation and efficiency and profitability, which I think is good for the long term.
I agree.
I
think
money.
The tough part is Amtrak's prices continue to rise at a rate that is just, to me, unreasonable in terms of what we're doing. Year after year, it rises thousands of dollars. And I think we're going to see a point here in the next 5 to 7 years where it just no longer makes sense to run these cars up that track, because you're going to start losing money. The state isn't subsidizing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I know Amtrak's losing money, but I'm talking about the nonprofit that I do work for.
Right.
They'd be losing money trying to do this. It'd be more beneficial for them to just have people come stare at a stagnant car than it would be to actually ride it. And that's awful to me. That is terribly awful.
That's why we need the metaverse.
Oh, boy.
So we can all escape.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, let me, guys, I like to keep this under an hour, and we're coming down to the final few minutes here. And it's my fault because I kind of got a little loose on the segments, but I did want to bring this piece up here. 7 ways that the bill could change the future car. I look through here. It's all pretty much safety related. What I'm curious, guys, is, your comments on them. Do you already have some of these features in your cars now? Like I like this one, stopping DUIs before they happen. So the whole idea here is that the bill, if you want to get funding as a car maker, you're going to have to, implement a mechanism that prohibits that. I can't think of any reason not to do that. Can you guys? Any opposition to something like that? Other than maybe costs?
It just seems like the marketplace will respond to that on its own without the government getting involved in the requirement. But That could be wrong.
Well, we don't have it now. I mean, I don't think, as far as I know, there's nothing
Well,
built
here in
into
New
vehicles.
Jersey, if you have a DUI and you go to get your license reinstated, they have to install a device in your car that you have to breathe into to start the engine. And once it gives it the okay, you can turn the ignition on. So if that's what they're going to put into every car, I think there may be some opposition. So I'm curious to see how AI will continue to take over and see how our driving habits are changing.
What there will be is a company who invents the defeat of that, the tech that overcomes it and sells it on Amazon. Path of least resistance for the,
Yeah.
How about this? Adaptive driving beam headlights. I never knew they weren't permitted in the United States.
Yeah,
but
they're everywhere else. Yeah.
What Tucker came out with this in 1930 something? The center head beam would turn with the steering wheel. I mean, talk about history repeating itself. And how many years later we're now making
had that for a while here.
Yeah, Lexus in 1990 had it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what this does for me is like, was it not permitted in the United States, or it just wasn't?
My understanding is it's not permitted, but I don't know that definitively. And why, I have no idea.
Yeah, but now it could be standard. Now it could start to be standard. I like this one, rear seat reminder. Too many pets and children being left in cars. Again, these are government regulations being mandated, if you will, to automakers to get the funding, or whether or not to get funding, just to be able to put cars on the street.
I solved that problem by getting rid of the rear seats.
Get a roadster. Just get a roadster. This one's funny. Stop, drop, and don't roll. I guess cars that just got away with no man driver killed 142 people, injured 2,000. Oh, in 2015, not last year.
A lot of the new cars, 2019 and up, if you are in drive and your door opens, it immediately slams it into park. So it's incredible. But I'm going to start to see you'll start to see this become.
I like that. I can actually say there was one time recently in recent memory, I think I tried to get out of the car while it was still in drive.
Got to slow down the drive-through.
I was going to add this, Paul. You might want to comment on this. Let me bring this back here. I was thinking that as cars get more autonomous, and I think the makeup, the design, and the experience of cars they're just going to continue to get more and more similar. Meaning that our attachment to the differences between brands is getting less and less, which kind of makes me think of public transit, Paul, in the sense that in our lifetime, within the next 15 years, we're probably not going to have to man the car. We're just going to get into the cars, and they're going to be run by the autonomy and connectivity, in the road system. Doesn't that kind of fall into public transportation at that point?
It does. It feels very much like it, doesn't it? When they talk to each other. I mean, that's what's, I just was talking with Nadine Lee, who's the CEO of Dallas's transit system, DART. She's been there about 4 months. She was on this panel we did, and she was saying that's one of the things that excites her is, for the safety aspects of it, the vehicles talking to one another. One of the big benefits of autonomous vehicles, nobody likes the big brother aspect of it, I don't think. But one of the benefits of it is they are safer in the long run. They're much safer, and because they talk to each other and they identify the hazards. And autonomous buses are the same way.
The next train is likely a daisy chain of cars,
right?
And the railroad tracks are the road. And
that's
at that point, Alex, the earlier question, that's when the efficiency of the trains come back, is when they're no longer trains but cars.
It's a train of cars. Yeah,
it's a train of buses, actually.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And you just hook on the number of buses demand has at that given moment, right? They just sync up.
Are you suggesting you see cars being on tracks?
No. I see buses. So let's say you have demand for one bus, and its demand's going up. Another bus just syncs itself with the first bus, and they use the road as they do today, but that's the new train track, right?
I see.
And then a third bus. And so basically the buses become intelligent train cars, because one of the inefficiencies of the train is it's really, really costly to unhook the train, right? To go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 and do that every time you have a stop. You can't do it. But with autonomous vehicles, they could predict that demand and, literally with sensors in the
Adjust
car,
accordingly. Yeah.
and just constantly be adjusting their capacity as they go down the road.
Yeah, they're almost there now, Eric, with the transit systems now have GPS on the roof. You can see where they're at, but they also have analysis of who's in the vehicle. So they tell you by looking at your phone, is this bus coming up already full? Do I need to come out of my office and walk down there to find a full bus? That's the kind of stuff that it's already in place all over the country. So yeah, we're getting there.
Nice. Yeah, I saw some new things too. I think it's Audi has these smart sensors for the traffic lights, and it controls the speed of the car, so you always get a green light.
That's right.
And
we had
it too, right?
Great. I'm going to sit behind someone going 2 miles an hour up to a stoplight. Just what I want.
Traffic signal priority, they call that for buses. Yeah, it lets them through. So there's all kinds of things happening. It's an exciting time, I think, in the whole area of mobility. And so great show, Ryan.
Yeah,
it really is an exciting time.
Mobility business too. So that was a nice time together, Ryan.
I got to thinking while you were talking about the buses, like coming on demand as volume warranted. I was like, by that time they'll just be able to print them in 3D on demand and put them out on the roroad. Bada boom, bada bing.
Or where you have just a daisy chain of pods, right? Where everybody has their own unique pod, right? And they just, because there's no reason.
Jetsons.
Right.
There you go. Just thinking that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When robots are driving our cars, it'll be cool in the sense like we were saying, you're at a stoplight, right? And then the guy in front of you waits for the car in front of him to go halfway through the intersection before he starts. The next thing, only 4 cars get through when really 10 should have. Like that level of inefficiency is, that's where we need technology. Get those cars moving safely and efficiently. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say you have to get through that point to get to the efficiency side of things where they've learned, okay, I can actually get 10 cars through to, make this work. But anyway.
Yeah.
All about efficiency.
I think, unfortunately, the ATOLs will probably beat. I think you're going to see drone taxis leapfrog over a lot of this. Yeah.
Here's a comment from Jim on the live feed about GM breaking revenue from vehicle as a platform. And I think what he's referring to is all the metrics and the analytics that come out of our driving behavior is a value to different companies. And hopefully it becomes a form of currency for us. We're seeing it now, like with insurance, you get a discount if you share. If you share your driving patterns, you get discounts. So thanks, Jim, for that comment.
You can earn Amazon rewards.
There we go. That's your next level, Eric.
Yeah.
Shopping in the car.
Yeah,
get
most
rewarded.
likely be our next form of taxation, right?
Yeah,
it'll be. They've already talked about it, right?
Right.
By mile.
Yeah, when you don't buy gasoline anymore, that gas tax sort of goes away, right?
Exactly. So they'll start taxing us by the mile driven at that point.
Yeah, like truckers, they got fees based on their weight and their distance and what road they're on and all that good stuff. Guys, so great having you here. Thanks for chiming in, Alex. First time
Thanks
up
for
here,
having
but
me.
love that you had so much input. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Paul, great to see you.
As
Eric,
always.
always a pleasure as well. So we'll let you guys go, and I'll go ahead and wrap up the show for you. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
All right. So Eric Brown from AskOtto, Paul Comfort, the Transit Unplugged podcast, turning into also a TV show, as you heard him say. And that was Alexander Tholl from DiveDesign doing pet prosthetics. So thanks, Jim, and for everyone that chimed in on the live feed. Great to have you here. We have one more show to do this year. For those that have been tuned in a long time, I used to do this show every week. Yeah. And then I would do smaller iterations with different discussions twice a week on top of that. Now we actually put it all into one and do the show once a month, only because I had an overabundance of information to put into the podcast. And like I said, this is meant to be for mostly for the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, let me go back to sharing my screen here. There you go. I'll put this one up right there. If you go to autoconverse.com, and there's a link there for the podcast, that'll bring you to the site, but you can just search for AutoConverse on your preferred podcast app. It's all one word, AutoConverse. Check it out. It's a great podcast. And look, if you're interested in getting up here and being on the podcast, maybe you got, a company development, a press release, new technology, a partnership, you name it. If it belongs up here, we want to hear about it. So head on over to autoconverse.com, click on MTC show, and you'll see best ways to connect with me. You can also use live chat, and you can request to talk to me or just leave me a message, and I'll get over to you. And I should one last mention, if you haven't done so yet, and thanks to all those that are subscribed to the show through SMS, text the keyword AutoConverse to 855-766-7585. We'll send you a link to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then we'll send you a link to the show every month when we're getting ready for it to go live. We'll probably start sending the podcasts through there as well. All right, guys, that's it for the day. Again, I'm Ryan Girardi. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday weekend, and enjoy your families, enjoy your friends, enjoy that special time that we all have together. I'm looking forward to it. Heading out to Michigan, where most of my family is going to be at the Michigan-Ohio State football game, which is a huge game this year. So I am obviously excited about that. That's all for now. You know what, guys? I had something cool for you. Hang on. We are going to play this. Oops. I was going to play this video from Elon Musk. Here we go. It's coming. And it's going to set the stage for what's coming up, probably as early as next month, but going into 2020. Here we go. No, it skipped already. Go back. Really? Did that just happen? All right. That got botched. Don't know why. Can't do it. Not happening. Guess I'm going to take the time to sign off now. Have a great weekend. And thanks again for everyone tuning in, being on the show. We'll see you next month, and enjoy. Take care, everyone.